Chapter 294. Startled, Nanny Rong hurried over and yelled, "Grandpa!" Qin Shuhua was scared. Pushed away by Nanny Rong's hand, she stepped back. The look on Nanny Rong's face changed, but her movements were smooth and calm. She laid the old man down and saw Qin Shuhua's frightened face. She yelled, "What are you waiting for? Call an ambulance." "Oh, okay." Qin Shuhua quickly got up and picked up her phone to make the call. Anxious, Nanny Rong yelled in a choked voice, "There's medicine upstairs. Go get it." Qin Shuhua was on the phone when she heard Nanny Rong's yell. Without thinking, she stumbled up the stairs and asked, "Which room?" "The first room on the left." Hearing Nanny Rong's yell, Qin Shuhua opened the door of the second bedroom and walked in. However, after rummaging through the room, she still could not find it. "Did you find it?" "It's in the drawer." Nanny Rong yelled as she gave captainly first aid. The call was finally connected. Qin Shuhua said the address while rummaging through the drawer. However, after rummaging through the first drawer, she still could not find the medicine Nanny Rong mentioned. However, the second drawer could not be opened. In for a penny, in for a pound, Qin Shuhua picked up the huge glass ornament on the bedside table and smashed it into the second drawer. The glass ornament was broken, and the drawer made a muffled sound. The lock was broken. Qin Shuhua opened the drawer and did not see any medicine. Instead, she saw a translucent file bag with two eye-catching words on it, "Divorce Contract." Halfway through the class, Su Qianxi heard that Grandpa was in the hospital. Under the gaze of all the students, Su Qianxi left halfway and hurried to the hospital. Captain Li was still asleep, and Qin Shuhua was crying in fear. Seeing her, Li Xiqing immediately went to her. Su Qianxi was out of breath. She grabbed his sleeve and asked, "What's wrong? How is Grandpa?" "Sudden myocardial infarction." Hearing that, Su Qianxi almost cried. With her eyes red, she yelled, "How could it be? Grandpa is so healthy. How could he suddenly have a myocardial infarction?" Li Xiqing grabbed her and stared at her, saying, "Calm down. Grandpa will be fine. Don't think too much." She burst into tears. "It's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, he would be fine." His grandfather had lived for a very long time in his previous life. He would definitely be fine. However, although she comforted herself like this, she still couldn't hold back her tears. She couldn't stop the fear in her heart. What should she do? She was scared. There were too many variables in this life. In her previous lifetime, she had been protected by her grandfather, and Li Xiqing hated her very much. Was God going to take Grandpa away from her because Li Xiqing liked her? No, what to do, what to do? Su Qianxi still could not help crying. Li Xiqing held her in his arms and suppressed his fear. He whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. Grandpa will be fine. He will live a long life. Don't scare yourself." Qin Shuhua was still holding the folder that she had just taken out of the drawer. Seeing the scene of husband and wife embracing each other, he suddenly felt that it was very ironic. Chapter 295. "Sir." Nanny Rong came in from outside, looking hesitant. Eventually, she took out the thing in her hand and said, "Master is like this because he saw this." Take a look. Seeing Nanny Rong's expression, Li Xiqing knew it was not something good. However, when he saw the words on it, he still looked gloomy. Su Qianxi looked over and immediately saw Li Zhao's name. Grandfather-grandchild identification. Su Qianxi took a closer look and read each line carefully. Her heart sank. Pinching her arms, she looked up at Li Xiqing. Su Qianxi looked at him incredulously. Taking a step back, she looked at the report and felt her heart wrenching. Li Xiqing's face was still gloomy. Seeing Su Qianxi's expression change, his jaw tightened. Turning his head, he stared at Qin Shuhua. "Did you bring this?" Qin Shuhua was shocked by her son's stare, but she quickly reacted and said angrily, "What kind of attitude is that? Is this how you talk to your mother? Am I? Li Xiqing stared at her and tightened his grip on the report. His fingers were itching to tear the pieces of paper to shreds and stuff them into Qin Shuhua's mouth. Qin Shuhua was a bit scared and said, I took your father's hair to Tang Menjing for the identification yesterday. She gave it to me early this morning. It clearly says that the baby in Tang Menjing's belly is your father's grandson. Su Qianxi looked at Li Xiqing and Qin Shuhua and suddenly felt weak in the knees. Grandpa was still in the emergency room, and the relationship between Tang Menjing and Li Xiqing was undeniable. One after another, large rocks came crashing down on her as if they were going to take her life. So hard and so heavy. Squatting down, Su Qianxi's body was shaking. Seeing that Su Qianxi was not right, Nanny Rong immediately went over and helped her up. Am? Li Xiqing was shocked and quickly came over. However, before he touched Su Qianxi, she dodged. Don't touch me. Su Qianxi yelled hysterically. Her eyes were red, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. He still wanted to move forward, but she felt disgusted. Kicking him in the chest, she struggled and screamed, Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. Don't touch me, don't touch me. So dirty, so dirty. Su Qianxi's voice became more and more choked, and she burst into tears in Nanny Rong's arms. Seeing her like this, Nanny Rong also felt bad. Her eyes turned red, and tears fell. She glared at Li Xiqing and scolded, You did this. Li Xiqing pursed his lips and said, Trust me. How could he believe it, how could he? The evidence was irrefutable, and it was right in front of them. How could they believe it? Even though Nanny Rong had raised him, she did not believe it. It's not me. Holding the report, Li Xiqing squatted down. It's not me. Holding Nanny Rong, Su Qianxi sobbed and did not want to look back at him. The door of the emergency room was finally opened. Su Qianxi immediately got up and ran to the doctor. How is it? The doctor dodged and said, Fortunately, the first aid was done in time. The critical period is over. You have to be careful. The patient cannot be agitated again. You have to stabilize her emotions. Chapter 296. Nanny Rong exclaimed, and Qin Shuhua was startled as well. Li Xiqing reacted the fastest. He rushed up and bent over to catch her. The sound of his knee hitting the ground was shocking. However, he did not seem to notice the pain in his knee at all. At the same time, he found that she was covered in cold sweat. His heart ached terribly, and he could not help panicking, shouting, Doctor, doctor. The fetus was actually less than 4 months old. Seeing the baby grow up day by day, Tang Menjing's heart became more and more unsettled. Do you really think it's Li Xiqing's child? Rong Rui's voice was like a nightmare, haunting her day and night. At the beginning, she was calm, but now she was awakened by nightmares every night. In front of her, she had written half of her mother's diary. Every day, she would write down her feelings in it. However, if it was not Li Xiqing's child, what was the point of writing it down? After thinking about it, Tang Menjing decided to go to Qin Shuhua. No matter how difficult the old man was, she would not abandon her. After all, she owed her. When she found Qin Shuhua, Li Xiao was not at home. Qin Shuhua and Lu Sa were arranging flowers. After sending Lu Sa away, Tang Menjing went straight to the point. Auntie, is it still not done? The smile on Qin Shuhua's face froze. Menjing, you know that Captain Li loves Su Qianxi. You were in so much trouble at the party. It's not that I don't want to help you, but Captain Li and Xiqing's father both scolded me. Now Captain Li is so angry that he went to live with Xiqing. If something happens at this time, how can I live in this house? Qin Shuhua's smile froze. Tang Menjing was reluctant. But I'm pregnant with your grandson. Hey, Menjing, listen to me. You'd better not have this child. Once it's born, it's destined to have no father. You know how stubborn Xiqing is. Once he sets his mind on something, no one can touch it. No way. Tang Menjing gritted her teeth. Auntie, are you against me now? You know how I treat you. What happened to my brother? Before she could finish speaking, Qin Shuhua's hand, which was in the middle of cutting flowers, trembled. Her face had already turned white. She roared, enough. Tang Menjing knew that she had hit Qin Shuhua's soft spot. Gritting her teeth, she continued, Auntie, I saw it clearly. Enough. Qin Shuhua's face had turned green. You're threatening me. No, I'm just reminding you, Auntie. After all, I'm really carrying Brother Siqing's child. You just want the child of the Li family to return to the family. You're doing a good deed, aren't you? Li Siqing said. Qin Shuhua wavered. Tang Menjing was pleased and continued, Su Qianxi's mother must have done something to Captain Li, otherwise, how could she have married Brother Siqing? Qin Shuhua did not like Su Qianxi as a daughter-in-law. Glancing at Tang Menjing, she asked, is it really Siqing's child? A lie detector, Auntie. That's a military thing. How could it be wrong? However, when Tang Menjing said this, her heart was also pounding. Chapter 297. The more she thought about it, the more guilty she felt. That night, she had assumed that the man was Li Siqing. But in fact, she did not even see his face clearly before she was pushed onto the bed. Was it really not Li Siqing? He said that he had deleted the video, which proved that he had seen it. So, what was the truth? Tang Menjing was a bit uncertain. Looking at Qin Shuhua, she gritted her teeth and said, if you really doubt it, then let's do the test. Sure, I will ask Siqing to. No, don't let Brother Siqing know. Li Siqing was so smart that he would definitely ruin her plan. We will do the test ourselves. The fetus was only 11 weeks old, and the doctor did not recommend amniocentesis. After warning Tang Menjing about the danger, she still insisted. She could not wait. If it was, she would be more careful in the future. But if it was not, Tang Menjing did not dare to think about it and insisted on lying on the bed. When the needle pierced her belly, the only thought in her mind was, baby, you must do well. Qin Shuhua rushed the test result, and after she left, Tang Menjing came back again and rushed it to 6 hours. 6 hours later, Tang Menjing came as scheduled, and Mrs. Tang came at the same time. Holding Mrs. Tang's hand, Tang Menjing's stomach was a bit uncomfortable. She was nervous and looking forward to the result. However, when Mrs. Tang got the result, she was completely stunned. Seeing her reaction, Tang Menjing's heart was pounding and she was very nervous. Taking the result with trembling hands, she was dumbfounded by the series of zeros on it. The expression on Mrs. Tang's face changed from the original expectation to painful disappointment. She turned around and slapped Tang Menjing hard. Didn't you say the baby was Li Siqing's? How could this happen? Tang Menjing's face was soon swollen. She stared at the result in her hand and murmured, how is it possible? How is it possible? If it was not Li Siqing that night, then who could it be? Who could it be? Recently, Li Siqing often worked overtime in the company, so Qingyu's work was much easier. In the 3 years that she had worked for Li Siqing, she had only left the morning shift a few times. Just when he thought he could relax a little more today, he received a call from the big boss. She complained in her heart, but soon picked up the phone. Boss. Go to Star City and find 20 bodyguards and 20 nannies tomorrow. She was startled. Hearing his dangerous and cold tone, she became more nervous. What's wrong? Big Boss never liked to order servants and bodyguards around, and Star City, on the surface, it looked like a glamorous and lively casino. In fact, it was recognized as the largest and most mysterious trading place in Connecticut. The bodyguards and nannies there were all mute, but they were extremely expensive. Just one of them would cost millions. Many noble families liked to use such people, but what did Li Siqing need them for? Obviously, Li Siqing would not answer her. He continued, contact Luo Zhan and ask him to check the DNA registration system of the Kingstown First Military Hospital. Yes. Hearing Qingyu's response, Li Xiqing hung up and called Li Beixing. The call was quickly connected and he said, "Brother, do me a favor." It was a rare call from Li Xiqing. Li Beixing was very surprised and sighed, "Is there something that you can't handle?" Chapter 298. Rong Haiyue. Li Beixing repeated the name and said in an intriguing tone, "He is at the same level as Dad. Are you sure you want to investigate him?" Rong Haiyue's rank was the same as Li Zhao's. The two had always been friendly on the surface, but secretly, they were fighting. If Li Beixing rashly investigated Rong Rui and was found out by Rong Haiyue, it would be a lot of trouble. Li Xiqing knew this, so after finding out Rong Rui's identity, he did not go further, fearing that it would bring trouble to the Li family. But now, Li Xiqing sneered, and the coldness almost froze Li Beixing through the phone. "I want him to know that I am investigating him. Rong Rui must have played a part in this. If it were not for Rong Rui, the truth would have been revealed in the study last time." Tang Menjing and Rong Rui had a very close relationship. Now, Li Xiqing did not even know where Rong Rui was hiding and what identity he was using to help Tang Menjing do these heartless things. However, alerting the enemy was the best way to find him and get back at him. Although Rong Haiyue was Li Zhao's opponent, he was a decent and reasonable man. If he noticed that Li Beixing was investigating Rong Rui, he would certainly investigate the reason. At that time, he would naturally be able to find this guy. Li Beixing could hear Li Xiqing's ruthlessness through the phone and sighed. "It's a pity that you are not a soldier. Brave, smart, and ruthless." If Li Xiqing was a soldier, he would definitely not be inferior to Li Beixing. Unfortunately, he was a businessman. "Okay, since you said so, I will help you. Wait for my good news. Brother, Grandpa is in the hospital. Do you know that?" Li Beixing's voice suddenly became serious. "When did this happen?" Li Xiqing briefly told him what had happened. Li Beixing was furious. "Is Mom stupid? This kind of thing. Forget it. Wait for me. I'll go home right away." Li Xiao and Li Beixing arrived at the hospital at the same time. When they met, they did not look very good. Qin Shuhua and Nanny Rong were looking after Captain Li, but Li Xiqing was nowhere to be seen. When Li Xiao saw this, he was enraged. He lowered his voice and roared, "That brat, get him out here." Nanny Rong hurried to explain, "She just fainted, and Mr. Jiang is looking after her in the next room." Fainted? Li Zhao's anger subsided a little. What happened? Nanny Rong told her what had happened. As she spoke, her voice became more and more choked up. In the end, she cried for Su Qianxi. "I did not expect the second young master to be such a person. It is such a pity that the second young mistress is such a good girl. She is such a jerk." However, when he was about to speak, he was shocked to find that all the people around him were from the Li family and were on Li Xiqing's side. Immediately, Nanny Rong wiped her tears and said, "I'm going to see Madame Li." Li Xiao took a deep breath and looked at the old man on the sickbed without hiding anything. Captain Li's eyelids seemed to move. Qin Shuhua walked up to him in surprise and shouted, "Dad, you're awake." Captain Li had no strength to open his eyes. Seeing Qin Shuhua, he raised his hand and pushed her. He did not have much strength, but his resistance was obvious. Qin Shuhua's face changed, looking embarrassed. Chapter 299. Grandpa. Li Beixing called. Captain Li glanced at Li Beixing and said in a weak voice, "Beixing, call your brother. Get your brother here." Li Beixing nodded and went out of the door. He looked around and finally found Li Xiqing in the left ward. Li Xiqing was sitting by Su Qianxi's bed, holding her hand that was not on the drip. Noticing Li Beixing coming in, he only glanced at him. Nanny Rong was wiping her tears, looking at Li Xiqing with blame. Li Beixing felt that the world was about to change. He walked over and said, "Grandpa is calling you over. He looks a bit angry." Li Xiqing had already expected this. He put down Su Qianxi's hand and stood up. At the moment when he passed by Li Beixing said, Li Xicheng, are you really with Tang Menjing? Li Xicheng stopped, clenched his fists, and suddenly felt a strong sense of powerlessness. No one believed him. No one believed him. Squinting, Li Xicheng only said, she doesn't deserve it. So, what's with the DNA test? Dad's name is written on it, and the match is more than 70%. This can't be a coincidence. There's also the seal of the leading military hospital. You. Before Li Beixing finished, Li Xicheng's phone rang in his pocket. It was Luo Zhan. Picking up the phone, Luo Zhan's voice came through. Hello, Li Xicheng. Yes, how is it? I found it. There are 2 results in the system. Both have your father's name on them, but one is 0%, and the other is 1 after the other, but, say it. But I just checked the surveillance and found that 2 of the surveillance videos were cut. I can't see when they did the test, and I don't know who Tang Menjing did it with. It's a bit tricky. Rong Roy again? It's most likely him. He's getting more and more skilled. Now even I can't find him, and I don't know who he is. It's so scary. It's like he disappeared from the world. I know who he is. You don't have to worry about this for now. Do me another favor. What? In Jiangzhou, I have a villa. As he spoke, he paused. Li Beixing clearly sensed the sharp light that flashed in the depths of his eyes. The faint scheming glint in his eyes was clear. Li Beixing was shocked, finding it more and more difficult to understand his brother. What was he trying to do at this critical juncture? Li Xicheng suddenly changed the subject and said, I'll tell you later. Hearing them walking away, Li Xicheng, Li, Xicheng, Li, Xicheng, and Xicheng, Li, and Xicheng. Su, Rong Xicheng, Li, Rong, Li, Xicheng, and said, Li, sick, Li, R, sick, Xicheng said. R, sick, said, Su. Rong, Su, Xicheng, Li, Nanny Rong felt sad. She had seen with her own eyes how estranged Li Xicheng and his wife were from the beginning, and their relationship had finally improved. However, such a thing happened. Even she could not believe that Li Xicheng would do such a thing. She did not know how to comfort Su Qianxi. Suddenly, Su Qianxi frowned and looked at the door of the ward. A tall figure stood at the door. His belly was slightly bulging, looking at Su Qianxi with a smile. Chapter 300. Tang Menjing was carrying a bag and a bag of fruit. When she walked in, Nanny Rong looked very strange. What are you doing here? Nanny Rong had never been nice to Tang Menjing, not only because of this. Before this, she did not like Tang Menjing at all. Tang Menjing did not seem to notice Nanny Rong's unfriendliness. She walked in, looked at Su Qianxi and said, Su Qianxi, I heard that you are not well, so I came to see you. Su Qianxi curled her lips and said coldly, Oh, since you have seen me, you can go now. How could Tang Menjing leave? That was not her only purpose. However, seeing Su Qianxi's pale face in bed, Su Qianxi still felt very happy. Taking out a notebook from her bag, Tang Menjing pretended to be guilty and said, Su Qianxi, I know I am sorry, but I am really with Brother Xicheng. He said he would give our child the best name. Every day, I can feel the baby waiting for its father in my belly. I believe Andy has already shown you the test results. I hope you can. Hope me for what? Su Qianxi looked at her coldly and curled her lips. However, her expression was very stiff. Abdicate? Let you and Li Xicheng be together? Tang Menjing did not say anything, but her expression said it all. Su Qianxi suddenly felt ridiculous. Tang Menjing was the mistress, but why was Su Qianxi forcing her, the queen, to leave? I want to see Grandpa. Su Qianxi looked up at Tang Menjing. Can you help me there? Tang Menjing did not expect Su Qianxi to make such a request and felt a bit excited. It happened that she did not want to keep the bastard in her belly. If Su Qianxi could help her, then she would be screwed. Tang Menjing smiled and was about to speak when Su Qianxi continued, by the way, tell Grandpa and Dad about this. Looking at her belly, Su Qianxi said, after all, your child is his. He will take good care of you. Hearing that, Tang Menjing was a bit tempted. Yes, now everyone thought that the child in her belly was Li Xiqing's. Although Brother Xiqing did not admit it, since even Su Qianxi thought so, why didn't she use it to get married and then find a way to get rid of him? Tang Menjing's heart warmed up. She nodded and helped Su Qianxi down. Nanny Rong was shocked and said, Madam, let me do it, it's okay. Tang Menjing is my good friend. She won't hurt me. Then she smiled at Tang Menjing. Right, Tang Menjing? Tang Menjing felt even weirder, but seeing her innocent smile, she felt relieved and nodded. We should help each other. Let's go. Tang Menjing helped Su Qianxi out of the door. People were coming and going in the corridor. There were many patients and nurses. Just at the door, Su Qianxi let go of her hand and called, Tang Menjing. Tang Menjing was in a good mood. She looked up and said, yes? However, just as he finished speaking, a hand grabbed his hair and slapped him hard on the face. Slap. The crisp sound echoed in the corridor, attracting everyone's attention. Chapter 301. Tang Menjing subconsciously wanted to dodge, but her long hair was in Su Qianxi's grasp. Seeing Su Qianxi's hand coming down, Tang Menjing wanted to resist. However, before she raised her hand, she was hit by Su Qianxi. Then, the second, the third, the fourth, Su Qianxi hit Tang Menjing's face from both sides like crazy, which attracted the attention of the people around. Shameless, shameless, shameless. Su Qianxi yelled as she hit Su Qianxi. Nanny Rong was shocked but did not try to stop her. Well done. That's how it should be. Nanny Rong wiped her tears and looked at Su Qianxi coldly. Li Xiqing was talking to Grandpa, and the door was open. When he heard Su Qianxi's voice, he panicked and rushed out of the room. At a glance, he saw Su Qianxi drawing her bow at a figure. Shameless, shameless. Su Qianxi's voice was sobbing. Li Xiqing's heart skipped a beat and pulled her down. Su Qianxi's hands were red. Feeling someone was pulling her, she struggled like crazy. However, realizing it was Li Xiqing, she stopped struggling. All the strength in her body seemed to be drained. Collapsing in his arms, she burst into tears. Li Xiqing held her tightly in his arms and whispered, "It's okay. It's okay." Tang Menjing's face was already red and swollen. Su Qianxi was caught off guard and lost the chance to fight back. A kind-hearted person came up to see Tang Menjing and exclaimed, "Oh my God, look at her. Go and see. It's terrible." "I'll take you." However, Tang Menjing did not appreciate it. She pushed the kind-hearted person away and stared at Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing coldly. Su Qianxi was held in Li Xiqing's arms, crying like a child, as if it was her who had just been hit. "Don't cry, don't cry. Grandpa will be sad." Li Xiqing hugged her as if he was comforting a child, caring for her and whispering gently. Tang Menjing's heart ached, even more than her face. It turned out that Li Xiqing could be like this, sobbing. Su Qianxi said, "I want to go home, honey, I want to go home." "Okay, let's go home. I'll take you home." "Hubby, you love me, right?" "Yes, I love you, only you." "Hubby, you won't accept that woman, right?" "No, I only want you." Every word was like a death sentence for Tang Menjing. Su Qianxi looked satisfied in his arms. Burying her head in his arms, she said, "I want to go home. Honey, take me home." "Okay, I'll take you home." Li Xiqing felt his heart was about to be torn apart. He glanced at Tang Menjing coldly and said to Nanny Rong, "Take Miss Tang to the doctor. The medical fees are under my name. Be careful. Didn't she say that the child in her stomach was his? Then let's do another DNA test. I'll watch with my own eyes." However, in Su Qianxi's ears, the meaning was completely different. She loosened her grip on his sleeve and lay motionless. Li Xiqing carried her in his arms and quickly left the hospital. Putting her on the passenger seat, Li Xiqing carefully fastened the seat belt for her. However, he was caught off guard and was slapped hard in the face. Chapter 302. Li Xiqing's heart felt like it had been cut into pieces at this moment, bloody and unscathed. Gazing at her deeply, he fastened his seatbelt, closed the door, and sat in the driver's seat. Turning the steering wheel, he pursed his lips and did not say a word. Through the rearview mirror, he could clearly see the red handprint on his face, which was a bit dazzling. She leaned against the back of the seat with her eyes closed. Tears flowed down her face, and her hands hung limply on her lap. Silence. In the car, there was only the sound of each other's breathing. When they got home, he carried her all the way upstairs and put her on the bed. They did not say a word. Lying in bed, she opened her eyes and looked at him. At the same time, he looked at her as well. Their eyes met, and there were different emotions in each other's eyes. The two of them spoke at the same time, but soon shut up at the same time. Li Xiqing did not speak, looking at her with his cold and deep eyes. Su Qianxi's eyes were dry. Looking at him, her eyes were a bit empty. She opened her mouth and said, "Let's get a divorce." His eyes suddenly narrowed, he clenched his fists and blurted out, "No way. Let's get a divorce." With just 3 words, Li Xiqing had completely destroyed the calmness he had been maintaining. Propping his hands on the edge of the bed, he looked down at her and said firmly, "That is not my child. That woman must have done something to it. Tomorrow, I will go to her for a paternity test." Su Qianxi chuckled and pushed him. "Stop joking. If she can do something, can't you? Mr. Li, are you kidding me?" Li Xiqing felt like thousands of arrows were piercing his heart. He growled, "Su Qianxi. Yeah. I'm listening." Su Qianxi moved on the bed and found herself a comfortable position. Although her eyes were red and swollen, the sarcastic smile on her face was clear. Su Qianxi's attitude hurt Li Xiqing even more. She did not believe him. "Tang Menjing loves you wholeheartedly. She has you in her heart. You know that, don't you?" She would remember what they said in the car for the rest of her life. Li Xiqing did not expect that she would use his words against him. He retorted, "I just said it out of anger. But I'm very serious." She looked at him, her eyes full of sadness. "It's too tiring. Being with you, it's really, so tiring." She should not have expected that. A man like Li Xiqing should not belong to her. He and Tang Menjing were a match made in heaven. It was because of her that Tang Menjing could only be a mistress, pregnant with his illegitimate child. However, how could Li Xiqing's child be a bastard? Even if Tang Menjing was willing, Qin Shuhua would not agree. Rather than being defeated like a loser, it was better to strike first and gain the upper hand. At the very least, she could preserve the last shred of dignity that she had in her previous life and this life, right? However, Li Xiqing clenched his fists tighter and hit the edge of the bed. "Impossible. You can forget about it. I will prove to you that I have never done anything wrong to you. I have never touched her. That child has nothing to do with me." Chapter 303. With a loud bang, Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. Looking in the direction of his departure, she was in a daze. After a while, she took out her cell phone and dialed a number. Song Yifan had just boarded the plane. Before he could sit down, he received a call from Su Qianxi. This was the first time that Su Qianxi had called him, and Song Yifan was pleasantly surprised. He immediately answered the call and called, "Su Qianxi." Hearing Song Yifan's voice, Su Qianxi's helpless heart suddenly seemed to have found support. She burst into tears and said, "Dad." Her voice was choked with sobs, which shocked Song Yifan. He quickly asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" Su Qianxi could not say a word and began to cry. Song Yifan panicked and asked, "What's wrong? Tell me slowly." Su Qianxi calmed herself down and said, "Can I stay at your place for a few days?" Okay. Where are you? Dad will pick you up. Don't cry and don't run around. Song Yifan took down the small luggage that he had just put on the plane. Facing the confused look and shouts of the stewardess, he got off the plane and hurried out. Su Qianxi did not wait for Song Yifan in the house. Instead, she stood at the intersection where Li Xiqing would not run into her. There were only a few pieces of clothes in her suitcase. Song Yifan took a taxi and saw Su Qianxi. He immediately asked the driver to stop. Seeing Su Qianxi's red and swollen eyes, he did not dare to ask more. He put her luggage in the car and took it to his own place. When she received Li Xiqing's call, Tang Menjing was applying medicine in the hospital. Tang Menjing had never dreamed that he would ask for her by name. This was the first time since she graduated from college. Although Su Qianxi's face was swollen, Tang Menjing still squeezed out a smile to welcome this unexpected surprise. Li Xiao and Li Beixing followed Li Xiqing. When Tang Menjing saw them, she immediately could not keep her smile. She forced a smile and asked, "Brother Xiqing, what can I do for you?" Li Xiqing looked at Tang Menjing. Li Xiqing looked at her coldly and said, "Come with me." Feeling something was wrong, Tang Menjing asked uneasily, "What's wrong? Can't you just say it here? Don't make me repeat myself." Tang Menjing's eyelids twitched and she stood up immediately. Li Xiqing's attitude toward her had not changed at all. It had been more than 3 months since she had been so close to him. She felt indescribably close to him. Following Li Xiqing, the more she walked, the more familiar the surroundings seemed to her. This place. She had been here yesterday and the day before. This was the genetics department. Pausing, Tang Menjing had a bad feeling and asked, "Brother Xiqing, why did you bring me here?" "Blood test." At the same time, Qingyu had taken out a document and said, "Boss, I got it. Yesterday's results." Li Xiqing took it and flipped through it. It was the same as what he had seen in the afternoon. Curling his lips, Li Xiqing's eyes seemed to be filled with frost. What's with this result? Tang Menjing's heart was pounding. She forced herself to say, "What do you mean? The evidence is right in front of you, and you still want to deny it? Then, what about this one?" Chapter 304. Tang Menjing acted as if she had caught a hot potato. She immediately threw the results out and shouted, "Li Xiqing, what do you mean?" Her voice was so loud that it was deafening. Li Xiao and Li Beixing did not expect Tang Menjing to be so agitated. Tang Menjing gasped and said, "You can leave me, but why do you have to doubt me like this? Am I that kind of person in your eyes?" Li Xiqing stared at her coldly. Qingyu stood behind Li Xiqing and pouted disdainfully. Of course she was. Qingyu had already seen what kind of person Tang Menjing was when they were in Australia. If people wanted to belittle themselves, nothing could stop them. Whether it's true or not, we'll know after another test. Li Zhao's voice was full of authority. He looked at her and said, "Both have my name on them, but the 2 sets of data are not the same at all. Miss Tang, can you explain which set is mine?" Tang Menjing's face turned pale. For a moment, she did not know how to explain. At this time, a nurse came out. Seeing so many people, she suddenly became nervous and said weakly, "Miss Qing." Qingyu heard the call and turned her head. The nurse looked nervous and said, "The amniotic fluid sample taken from Miss Tang yesterday seems to be missing. I have been looking for it for a long time, but I can't find it." And Mr. Li, hearing this, everyone's face changed. Only Tang Menjing looked indescribably relaxed. Li Xiqing turned his head and stared at Tang Menjing with a pair of sharp and cold eyes, as if he wanted to freeze her alive. Tang Menjing shivered and subconsciously took a step back. At the same time, a doctor in a white coat passed by. Wearing a big black-rimmed glasses, he glanced at Tang Menjing and walked past her without a moment's pause. "Then I'll take it again." Li Xiqing's cold voice came out, without any warmth. The doctor in the white coat looked back and glanced at Li Xiqing coldly. Li Xiqing noticed his gaze and also looked over. However, before he could even see Li Xiqing's face, the doctor disappeared at the end of the corridor. Hearing that, Tang Menjing turned pale and yelled, "No! You don't dare!" Qing Yu provoked. "No, no!" Tang Menjing cried hysterically. "You can't do it." If they did it at this time, it would be no different from slapping their faces. She wanted face, and so did the Tang family. The news of her pregnancy had spread all over Kingstown. If it was not Li Xiqing's child, then, absolutely not. The nurse also quickly came over and said, "The fetus is less than 4 months old. It's already very risky to do an amniocentesis. If you do it again, you will definitely miscarry." Hearing that, Tang Menjing was relieved. At the same time, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Holding her belly, she bent over and turned pale. The nurse was shocked and quickly came over to support her. "Oh my God, hurry up and push the bed over." No one saw that at the end of the corridor, the doctor who had just walked past leaned against the wall with a cold and expressionless face. Chapter 305. Tang Menjing's pregnancy had been affected. It was hard for her to calm down after the ups and downs. "You will never be able to pay me back." When she was standing at the door of the genetics department, she could still hear the voice behind her. Tang Menjing could not help but break out in a cold sweat. That guy was too bold. The door of the ward was suddenly opened, which startled Tang Menjing. Jolted, Zhang Xian abruptly raised his head. A man in a white coat came in. He was not very tall, about 178 centimeters, wearing a big black-rimmed glasses. He looked serious. Tang Menjing was shocked to see him and exclaimed, "Why are you here?" The young man walked in, took off his glasses, and looked at her face with pity. "That woman is so cruel. She is so hateful." Tang Menjing pushed him away in shock and said, "Why are you here?" Li Xiqing admitted that he knows you. "If he recognizes you, neither of us will have a good ending." "What are you afraid of?" "I have hacked all the surveillance cameras. Even if Li Xiqing has 3 heads and 6 arms, what can he do to me? But then again, if it were not for me, you would have been caught by Li Xiqing for another paternity test. At that time, you will not be the only one ruined." Tang Menjing, of course, knew this and said, "Didn't you say you went home? Why are you still here? When did you come?" "Well, I sneaked out." Rong Rui pulled a stool and sat down. "Li Xiqing has his eyes on my uncle. My uncle just called me and told me to go home. I am not afraid." He was not afraid, but Tang Menjing was very worried. She said, "Do you think you are so powerful? If it were not for you secretly plotting against Li Xiqing, he would not even know who you are. Otherwise, do you think you can get away with it? At this time, you'd better listen to your uncle and go home. If Li Xiqing catches you." "So what if he catches me? What can he do?" Rong Rui looked disdainful. "There is a Li Xiao above Li Xiqing. Li Xiao's rank is the same as my uncle's. His grandfather is a general, and so is my grandfather. I might not lose to him. Menjing, I really don't understand. What's so good about him? To think that you can't forget him and are even willing to give birth to his child." Although the child in her belly was not Li Xiqing's, it was enough to make Rong Rui jealous. "What are you going to do now? We can't keep it forever, right?" Rong Rui glanced at her abdomen meaningfully. "If word gets out that this child is not Li Xiqing's, it will not only ruin you, but also your father and your entire family." Gritting her teeth, Tang Menjing looked at him and whispered, "Of course not. I will use Su Qianxi to get rid of it. Then I can put the blame on Su Qianxi and clear my name. Su Qianxi will definitely suffer. It's good that you know. Public opinion was the most terrifying thing. Gossip is a fearful thing. Got it. Go away and don't come back again." Tang Menjing urged, full of fear. Rong Rui felt a little bored. He pouted, put his glasses back on, stood up, and walked toward the door. However, as soon as he opened the door, he saw 2 rows of tall men. Chapter 306. Song Yifan did not live in the center of Kingstown. Instead, he lived in a mid-range neighborhood near the center. It was quiet and peaceful, and the neighborhood was very clean. On the 16th floor, after Su Qianxi entered the door, Song Yifan quickly cleaned up a room for her. It was a simple 2-bedroom apartment with a modern style, very Song Yifan style. While Song Yifan was cleaning up the room, Su Qianxi went into the kitchen and rummaged around. She found nothing. The fridge was empty, and many appliances had been powered off. Thinking of the suitcase Song Yifan was carrying, Su Qianxi suddenly realized that. Was he going on a long trip? In the end, he was called back by her, and as soon as he came back, he helped her a lot. Su Qianxi felt touched and guilty. When she closed the fridge door, Song Yifan happened to come out. It's done. I'll help you move it in. Su Qianxi looked at him, nodded, and followed him into the house. The room was not big, less than 1/3 of the size of the house. However, it was clean and cozy, and there was the smell of air freshener in the air. Song Yifan felt a bit embarrassed and said, "It's a bit small. You can stay here for now. I'll get you a bigger house later." Su Qianxi smiled and whispered, "Dad, why are you so nice to me?" She was clearly not his biological daughter. Clearly, he could have completely ignored her. However, Song Yifan really treated her like a daughter, so considerate and warm. She just glanced at his suitcase, which had just passed the security check, and the date was today. He came back from the airport. Song Yifan's eyes became gentle again. He smiled and said, "Silly girl, you are my daughter." Su Qianxi's heart suddenly felt like there was an extra stove, so warm that her eyes couldn't help turning red. "Don't cry. You don't look good anymore." Song Yifan felt sorry for her. "You must be hungry. I'll take you to dinner. What do you want to eat?" Su Qianxi shook her head. "I have no appetite. I don't want to eat." "No matter how unhappy you are, you can't torture yourself. Let's go. I'll take you to eat my favorite food." Song Yifan took her downstairs. After walking for about 3 minutes, they saw a noodle house. The noodle house was very simple, and the decorations were a little old, but the hygiene was very clean. An old man was sitting at the front desk. The old man was watching TV with a big snow-white cat in his arms. Seeing them come in, a pair of blue eyes looked at them and meowed. "Meow." The old man raised his head and chuckled. "Xiao Song, you're here. Didn't you say you were going to London today? You didn't go?" "Something came up, so I came back." Song Yifan was obviously very familiar with the old man. "Let me introduce you. This is my daughter." The old man looked surprised. "Oh, you have a daughter? Aren't you single?" "Goddaughter." "Hey, she looks a little familiar. Is she Li's granddaughter-in-law? What's his name again?" "That old guy is already so old, but he still runs around." "Li Sun," she said. Yes, that old fellow." "Are you that Su?" "Yes." She was a bit embarrassed. She seemed to have a tag that she couldn't get rid of. Chapter 307. The old man's face showed that he had expected it. He clapped his hands and said, "Oh, that old man is so lucky. His grandchildren are so capable, and he can marry such a beautiful granddaughter-in-law." "Are you the wife of the second son?" "Yes, of those kids, the one I admire the most is the second son. His whole family is in the military. He went into business despite everyone's opposition and did a good job. You are so lucky to marry a man like that. Not a bad guy." Su Qianxi smiled reluctantly. Song Yifan gently pushed her inside and said to the old man, "Same old rule, give me 2 servings." Okay. The old man immediately turned his attention and shouted, 2 servings of Song's rule. Su Qianxi heard that and immediately choked. What the hell was Song's rule? Seeing her smile, Song Yifan knew that he did not bring her here for nothing. He explained, I come here often, and they all know me. That's why they named my favorite food. Because he often came here, the shop's business was booming. After all, Song Yifan's name was very useful. Soon, the dish was served. It was a bowl of fried paste noodles. The sauce was very fragrant. Su Qianxi broke a pair of chopsticks and slowly ate it. Song Yifan also looked hungry and ate quickly, but Su Qianxi took small bites and did not have much of an appetite. It was already past 8:00 in the evening. Su Qianxi's phone rang and kept vibrating on the table. There was only one word, honey. Su Qianxi turned off the sound and let it ring. After the first call, Su Qianxi turned off the phone and put it aside. Song Yifan saw it clearly. He seemed to be eating the noodles and asked, Did you have a fight? Su Qianxi did not speak and took a bite of the noodles. Li Xiqing was going crazy. When he got home, he looked everywhere but did not find Su Qianxi. She did not answer his calls and eventually turned off her phone. Su Qianxi was becoming more and more introverted and timid. She did not have any friends or close classmates. Kingstown was so big. Where would she go? The first place that came to his mind was school. Leaving this matter to Qingyu, the second place that came to his mind was Luihan. Thinking that she was probably with Luihan, Li Xiqing's heart felt like it was on fire. He drove to Kingstown First Hospital, found Luihan's ward, and directly broke in. Luihan was on an 4 drip with a computer in front of him. The hand that was not on the 4 drip was holding the mouse and clicking quickly. Seeing Li Xiqing coming in, Luihan was surprised and then sneered. Mr. Li, how have you been? What about her? Her? Luihan immediately thought of Su Qianxi. Are you looking for Qianqian? Qianqian. The intimate address quickly ignited Li Xiqing's anger. Did she come to see you today? With such a husband who doesn't even give her the right to make friends, how dare she come to me? Luihan's hand stopped moving. She's gone. Li Xiqing pursed his lips and clenched his fists. Although she didn't want to admit it, she might have run away from home. He didn't give anyone an explanation. Chapter 308. Picking up the phone, she called Song Yifan. Song Yifan did not answer the phone on the way downstairs and into the car. On the 4th call, he finally answered. Song Yifan sounded the same as usual. Hello? Father-in-law Song. Song Yifan immediately became alert. Looking at Su Qianxi, who was pushing the shopping cart, he stopped. Is my wife with you? Su Qianxi turned around and saw Song Yifan holding the phone, looking embarrassed. She knew it was him. Shaking her head at Song Yifan, Su Qianxi pursed her lips and looked like she was about to cry. Song Yifan was scared and quickly said, No, why is Su Qianxi with me? Is she not at home? Well. Li Xiqing suddenly felt powerless. They had been married for half a year, but he found that he did not know her at all. She did not go to Luihan or Song Yifan. She was not at school or at home. At this critical moment, she could not be at the old house. So, where would she go? What's wrong? Did you two have a fight? Song Yifan asked with concern. It's okay. If you have any news about her, remember to tell me. I am looking for her. I have something very important to tell her. Oh. Okay, if I see her, I will tell her that you are going crazy looking for her. Thank you. Song Yifan hung up the phone. Seeing Su Qianxi's complicated expression, he sighed and said, He is looking for you. Okay. Su Qianxi did not react much. She turned around and took a vegetable from the shopping cart. Buy some food at home. I will cook for you in the next few days. A few days? That was great. He had never tried living with his daughter before. However, at the same time, Song Yifan felt some sympathy for Li Xicheng. Silently mourning for him for 3 seconds, he followed Li Xicheng. Seeing Li Xicheng walk out, Lu Yihan also picked up the phone to call Su Qianxi. However, her phone was turned off. That was what he had expected. Moving the mouse, he opened the chat window with her and quickly typed, "Call me back." But after thinking about it, he still made a call to Yu Lily. Su Qianxi did not have many friends, but Yu Lily was one of them. Would she go to Yu Lily? Ah! Yu Lily's whole body trembled, and she screamed under the man's push. Oh Ming loved her lascivious look. He held her waist, turned around, and continued to fight. The phone on the bedside table rang. Yu Lily looked sideways and saw a string of numbers. There was no name, but when she saw the number, Yu Lily was so excited that her heart clenched. Oh Ming let out a low sigh, bent over, and scolded, "Bad guy, what do you want?" Half an hour later, the flames of war finally subsided. After Oh Ming entered the bathroom, Yu Lily got up and called Lu Yihan back. "Hello?" Yu Lily's voice was very low, but she was secretly delighted. "Why are you looking for me?" Lu Yihan looked at the time and said grumpily, "What took you so long? What are you doing?" "It's none of your business." "What?" "Hurry up and fart." Qianqian is missing. Li Xicheng is looking for her. Did she go to you? Yu Lily felt a dull pain in her heart. I knew it. I knew it. Chapter 309. With a snort, Yu Lily resisted the urge to throw the phone away and said, "It's none of my business that she disappeared. She doesn't have many friends. She only has a good relationship with me and you in Kingstown. If she didn't come to me, she might have gone to you." "No, she didn't come to me." Yu Lily was a little annoyed. "Is there anything else? If not, I'll hang up." "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Yu Lily got up and turned around. Unexpectedly, she found someone standing behind her. Yu Lily was scared and almost fell. After she recovered, she shouted, "Damn, Oh Ming, are you crazy? You scared me to death." Oh Ming raised his eyebrows and pursed his lips. Naked, he walked toward her and asked, "Who were you talking to on the phone just now?" "Friends." "Boyfriend?" Yu Lily gave him a big stare. "It's none of your business. Just mind your own business." She glanced down and found that he still wanted to continue after the shower. She turned her head, rolled up the quilt, and said, "I'm going to take a shower." "Don't rush. Do it again." "No, you said it was only once. The last time. This time, it's true." Oh Ming pulled her back and threw her on the bed. Yu Lily was unable to fight back, so she gave in and let him have his way again. After that, Yu Lily was so tired that her bones were soft. She didn't want to move at all. "Yu Lily." "Yes?" Yu Lily didn't even bother to lift her eyelids. Oh Ming put his big hands around her and said seriously, "Let's get married." Yu Lily was scared and immediately got up from him. She looked at him incredulously. "Are you crazy?" Oh Ming looked at the bruises on her chest. His eyes darkened, and he smiled wickedly. He touched her face with his big hands and said seriously, "I'm not crazy. Marry me, and I will make you the young madam of the O family." Didn't she love money? The O family was rich. But Yu Lily looked like she had seen a ghost. She got up, got out of bed, and said quickly, "I'm going to take a shower." Oh Ming glanced at the water stains on his body and rolled to his feet. He followed closely behind her and walked in. Yu Lily saw him come in and said with disgust, "Get out." "Still want to scram?" Oh Ming deliberately twisted her meaning. "If you're not tired, we can do it in the bathroom. How about trying to develop a new position?" "Go away." Yu Lily threw the shower head at him. "I was afraid that you would F*** king come every day, every day. Furthermore, he had taken it several times a day, yet he did not see him nourishing his kidneys. Sooner or later, he would suffer from kidney deficiency and Mediterranean Sea. Oh Ming took the shower head, stretched out his hand, and pressed her against the wall. He poured the water on them and said, "I'm serious. I'm serious too. Scram. I'm talking about marriage." Yu Lily was suddenly speechless. Looking at his rare seriousness, she sneered, "With your identity as Master O, I don't deserve you. I don't need you to be worthy of me. It's fine as long as I like you." Yu Lily thought it was ridiculous, so she pressed closer and asked, "Do you like me or my body?" Oh Ming pressed his body against hers and laughed evilly. He pushed his thigh between her legs and whispered, "I like everything about you. Marry me, and everything I have will be yours." Yu Lily was suddenly entered, and she groaned. Chapter 310. When they all finished showering, it was already more than an hour later. Yu Lily lay there motionlessly, allowing Oh Ming to help her wash and dress her. Finally, she nestled comfortably on the bed and found a comfortable position to lie down. With his upper body bare, Oh Ming lit a cigar and sat on the small armchair next to the bed, smoking leisurely. Looking at Yu Lily sleeping soundly, Oh Ming felt indescribably annoyed. What was wrong with him? Why did this woman not like him at all? Now he was offering such a big price just to keep her by his side. Was this bait not big enough? Although the O family was not famous, they were absolutely rich. Didn't this woman love money? Why was she not willing to marry him? Oh Ming could not figure it out. The thick smoke blinded his eyes. After a long puff, he put out the cigar. The phone on the bed rang. Yu Lily impatiently pulled the quilt over her head. It was Li Xicheng. Looking at the time, it was past 11 p.m. Why was he calling at this time? Oh Ming picked up the phone and sat on the sofa with his legs crossed. "Hello, Mr. Li, what can I do for you? Are you with your woman? Why are you thinking about my woman in the middle of the night? My wife is missing. It is very likely that she went to see your woman. After all, Kingstown was so big. It was impossible for her to disappear into thin air." He had searched all the hotels, checked all the records of the stations, and even went to the Su family's house, but did not find her. "Unfortunately, my woman has been with me the entire day. She hasn't been separated at all." "Okay, I see." Oh Ming heard the disappointment in Li Xicheng's voice and whistled teasingly. "Did your wife run away from home because she couldn't stand you?" Li Xicheng's face became gloomier. He did not answer and directly hung up. Less than a second after the phone was hung up, a call came in. It was Cheng Yu. "Boss, according to your order, we have got the traffic surveillance. Mrs. seems to have left with Mr. Song." "Song Yifan?" "Yes." Li Xicheng suddenly felt like a fool, being fooled by Su Qianxi. He thought that Song Yifan would not lie to him about this. He thought that Song Yifan would at least have some sense as an elder. But it was Li Xicheng's voice. Hearing this, Cheng Yu was stunned. This was the first time she heard Big Boss swear. Although it was rude, but what was with that masculine smell? Ugh, so violent. So sexy. "You go back first. I'll call you if there's anything." "All right." She had cried all day and was exhausted. She thought that she would fall asleep soon after lying in bed, but there were things in her mind that kept her from falling asleep. The more he lay down, the more awake he became. He got up, opened the door, and walked out. Song Yifan was on the phone and was surprised to see her. She waved her hand to let him continue and walked barefoot to the sofa in the living room. However, before he sat down, the doorbell rang. When her snow-white feet touched the cold ground, she couldn't help but curl up. She walked to the door and tiptoed to look through the peephole. There was no one there. Chapter 311. Seeing him, Su Qianxi's first reaction was to pull her hand back and close the door. Li Xiqing reacted faster and grabbed the door to prevent her from closing it. Su Qianxi pushed the door twice, but it did not budge. Annoyed, she yelled, "Dad, there's a hooligan." Startled, Song Yifan turned around and was surprised to see it was Li Xiqing. However, he did not care and continued to speak fluent English. It seemed that they were talking about something important. "Put on your shoes," Li Xiqing said coldly with displeasure, looking at Su Qianxi's feet that were curled up because of the cold floor. Ignoring him, Su Qianxi reached out to push him, but her hand was firmly held by him. Holding her hand, Li Xiqing tried to force his way in. Su Qianxi panicked and yelled, "Dad, help me." Song Yifan was shocked. He quickly said goodbye to his friend on the phone and hung up. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi were still in a stalemate. Exasperated, Su Qianxi saw Song Yifan and said, "Don't let him in." However, Li Xiqing reacted faster and directly grabbed her waist. As Su Qianxi yelped, he picked her up and closed the door. They successfully broke in. Su Qianxi could not fight back at all. Feeling a bit amused, Song Yifan smiled helplessly. Being picked up, Su Qianxi blushed at her uselessness. Seeing that Song Yifan was smiling, she became angry. "You did nothing to save me." Li Xiqing threw her on the sofa, picked up her feet, and put them in his palm. Looking at Song Yifan, he said, "Father-in-law Song, I'm here to take my wife home." Su Qianxi wanted to take her feet back, but he held them firmly. "Let me go," she said angrily. "Don't move," he said firmly. Li Xiqing's palm was very warm, and the coldness on her feet quickly faded. Su Qianxi looked away from him and yelled at Song Yifan, "You betrayed me." Song Yifan sat down on the sofa not far from them and said innocently, "It's not me. I didn't say anything." Li Xiqing pursed his lips and rubbed her feet with his big hand. He said casually, "I found it myself. Let's go home." Su Qianxi pulled her foot back, stood up from the sofa, and went to her room. Li Xiqing wanted to follow them, but Song Yifan stopped him. "Kid, let's talk." Su Qianxi slammed the door and locked it. She got under the covers and listened to what was going on outside. However, the door was so soundproof that she could not hear anything at all. Stealthily, he put on his shoes and opened a corner of the door. Only then did he hear some movements. "I will take care of it." The voice was intermittent, and Su Qianxi could not hear it clearly. Stretching out her head to hear more, she heard footsteps. He quickly retracted his head, closed and locked the door, and crawled into bed. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Su Qianxi covered her head with the quilt and pretended to be dead. "Su Qianxi," he left. It was Song Yifan's voice. Su Qianxi paused and took off the quilt, feeling a bit sad. She felt wronged and unwilling. What the hell? Wasn't he here to take her home? Was he leaving? Su Qianxi felt so sad that she wanted to cry. He really did not care about her at all. Chapter 312. Holding back the urge to cry, Su Qianxi said, "I see. Dad, you should go to bed too." "I'm going to bed." "Get up and have a glass of milk. I've heated it up. Drink it before you go to bed," said Song Yifan. Su Qianxi did not want to get up, but she did not want to let him down. She stood up, walked to the door barefoot, and opened it. However, it was not Song Yifan who she saw, but her first reaction was to close the door. However, Li Xiqing moved faster and blocked the door. Su Qianxi slammed the door hard, and there was a strong resistance when the door was closed. Bang! Ah! Li Xiqing let out an exaggerated scream. Su Qianxi was shocked and quickly let go of the door. Seeing Li Xiqing holding his fingers, she was scared and held his hand. It was already bruised. Feeling distressed, she asked, "What do you do? Does it hurt?" Li Xiqing did not answer but held her with the other hand that was not injured. Su Qianxi was startled. Looking up, she saw a pair of eyes as deep as a lake. Suddenly annoyed, she struggled to push him away. However, how could she resist his strength? No matter how hard she tried, he did not move. Su Qianxi was annoyed. Let go. My hand hurts. Li Xiqing looked at her pitifully. It's all your fault. You still want to drive me away. You are so heartless. Su Qianxi felt a bit guilty and immediately shut up. Looking down at his fingers, she found that they were bruised, which looked a bit scary. It looked like it was hurting a lot. What do you do? Does it hurt? It hurts. Li Xiqing complained. Su Qianxi felt a bit distressed. However, seeing the smirk in his eyes, she immediately turned around and yelled, "You are a man. You are so fragile. How dare you say that?" Song Yifan did not know whether to laugh or cry. Could a man not get hurt? A man would also hurt when his fingers were pinched. However, Li Xiqing said, "Yes. That's why I need my wife to comfort me." His pitiful tone made Su Qianxi feel bad. She looked at him again and asked in a low voice, "Does it hurt?" "Yes. It hurts." Unable to watch it anymore, Song Yifan immediately turned around and left. Su Qianxi took his hand, walked into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and flushed it. Blood clots are difficult to treat, but cold water can relieve the pain. Li Xiqing's eyes became softer. Looking down, he found that she was still not wearing shoes. Hugging her with his big hand, she exclaimed and heard his voice. "Step on my foot." Su Qianxi looked down and found that her snow-white feet were a little red. It was cold. She didn't stand on ceremony and stepped on his foot, turned off the tap, and said, "Let go." "What are you doing? Wear your shoes." "Why are you wearing shoes?" "Go get some ice from the fridge." "Oh." He took her in his arms and walked to the kitchen happily. Opening the fridge, he asked, "How much do you want?" "1." She said. "And a towel." "Where can I get a towel?" Bathroom. Holding her in his arms, he went into the bathroom and took out a towel. "What about now?" Li Xiqing looked down at her. He found that she was blushing like an apple. Hearing his words, she said weakly, "The sofa." Chapter 313. Su Qianxi blushed even more and let him carry her to the sofa. She took the thing in his hand, wrapped the ice in a towel, and put it on his hand. His big hand was grabbed by her soft palm. The cold feeling came from her fingers and went straight to the tip of his heart. Li Xiqing's eyes became softer and whispered, "I found Rongrui." Su Qianxi paused, looked up at him, and was slightly surprised. "Rongrui?" "Yes, he and Tang Menjing plan to abort the child and then frame you. You'd better not contact Tang Menjing during this time." Su Qianxi was slightly shocked. This was indeed Tang Menjing's style, but how did he know? "You were eavesdropping?" "Eavesdropping?" Li Xiqing did not like the word eavesdropping. He frowned and corrected her, "To be exact, I was eavesdropping. Unfortunately, there was no recording. Otherwise, if he played it to her at this time, he would be completely cleared of suspicion." Su Qianxi blinked and looked puzzled. Li Xiqing explained, "Rongrui pretended to be a doctor and went to catch up with Tang Menjing when she was in the hospital. Therefore, she was caught red-handed by him." "You arrested Rongrui?" With Li Xiqing's personality, he would definitely not let it go. Sure enough, Li Xiqing looked at her with admiration and nodded. "Yes, locked in a secret place." "Ah, that's not good. If his family finds out, Rongrui was from the capital." Although she did not know what he did for a living, when Qingyu gave birth to a child in her previous lifetime, his family sent a dozen people, surrounding an old man, who personally gave Qingyu's daughter a name. That was enough to rival the Li family. "What I want is to let them know." Daring to break into the Li family's territory and hurt his people, Li Xiqing did not intend to let him go from the beginning. The power of the Rong family and the Li family had always been equal. Now it was the Rong family who offended them first. How could they not fight back? Su Qianxi was not particularly smart, and she knew nothing about politics. However, hearing what he said, she was relieved and asked, then, what about Tang Menjiang? This name had always been a thorn in Su Qianxi's heart. As time passed, it became deeper and deeper. In the hospital, Li Xiqing still wanted to say something, but his phone suddenly rang. It was Cheng Yu. Boss, Mr. Rong pretended to have a seizure. I called the doctor, but he injured the doctor and took your mother hostage. She picked up the phone and heard Cheng Yu's voice. However, he did not turn on the speaker, so she could not hear what Cheng Yu said. Li Xiqing frowned more and more. In the end, his eyes darkened. My mother? Yes. What is she doing there? She paused and said weakly, I thought you asked her to come. Li Xiqing's eyes darkened, and he said in a low voice, I know. Try to calm him down. I'll be right there. All right. Hanging up the phone, Li Xiqing got off the sofa under Su Qianxi's surprised gaze. Wait a minute, Li Xiqing looked down and rubbed her head. He said gently, I have something to do. You rest here for a while. I will pick you up when I'm done. Oh. Although she did not know what had happened, seeing that Li Xiqing was in a hurry, it must be something serious. However, didn't he say he would take her home? Chapter 314. Su Qianxi was a bit disappointed. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Can I go with you? However, he swallowed the words back. Yes? Su Qianxi shook her head and said, go ahead. He was a bit reluctant to take her home. However, thinking that Qin Shuhua might have been kidnapped by Rong Rui, he felt a bit uneasy. He said gently, go to bed early. It's too late. I'll pick you up tomorrow. It's okay. You go ahead. Su Qianxi stood up and pushed him to the door. Li Xiqing looked down at her feet and complained, why do you hate wearing shoes so much? In ancient times, you would be called a slut. Then he picked her up. It's getting cold. Remember to wear shoes at all times. Okay. Su Qianxi was put in bed and watched him leave. When the door was closed, Su Qianxi's heart suddenly became empty. She didn't want him to go, even though she had proposed a divorce to him today. But when she saw that he had come to find her, she regretted it. However, at the same time, she was also thankful for his opposition and his determination. That's it. Su Qianxi adjusted her sleeping position and closed her eyes. However, she could not fall asleep no matter how she tossed and turned in bed. Taking a breath, she finally picked up her phone. She browsed Weibo and clicked on Su Qian's posts. 80% of them were poisonous advertisements. After laughing for a while, Su Qianxi clicked on her Weibo and found that her fans had increased a lot. Originally, there were only a few zombie fans, but now there were tens of thousands of them. Seeing more than 80,000 fans, Su Qianxi clicked on the ones related to her, all of which were comments on her album. The Maldives, playing piano under wisteria, wedding photos, banquet photos, and all kinds of small photos of her life. There were thousands of comments at the bottom. A straightforward girl, Su Qianxi, Mr. Li, don't cry. Stand up and masturbate. Trust President Li, Tang and President Li have been childhood sweethearts for so many years. Any man with a little bit of interest would have already slept with her. Why wait until after marriage to cheat on her? Unparalleled Q18, Su Qianxi, my goddess is so beautiful. I'm a fan now. She's perfect. One night 8 times, unparalleled Q18, of course, my goddess is the most beautiful. She is not even on the same level as Mr. Tang. Because I'm cute, Su Qianxi, Mr. Tang is too shameless. Mr. Li, don't pay attention to her. Just like President Li said, she is delusional. Su Qianxi read one by one, and her heart was full of happiness. Looking through the album, she found a recent photo with him and posted it on Weibo. Su Qianxi, I believe you. Good night. Within 10 seconds, a Su Qianxi. Good. Love money, love modesty, love thousand Su Ci, what the F asterisk CK, late at night, single dogs say that they have been stuffed with dog food and are very satisfied with your photo. Su Qianxi chuckled and replied, just get used to it. Love money, love Qianqian, Qianqian Su Ci, F asterisk CK, I got flipped by the goddess, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. Excited, there were a lot of comments below, all clamoring for a change. Su Qianxi replied for a while and felt sleepy. She charged her phone and put it on the bedside table. Chapter 315. Jiangzhou was located on the edge of the center of Kingstown. When Li Xiqing drove to the villa in Jiangzhou, it was already past 12 o'clock. Sitting in the living room of the villa, Qingyu looked at Rong Rui, who was tied up like a fried dough twist on the ground, and yawned. Hearing the doorbell, a housekeeper immediately went to open the door. When Li Xiqing walked in, Rong Rui, who was lying on the ground, sneered. Coward, you're finally here. Li Xiqing ignored him and looked at Qingyu. Where's my mom? Auntie was frightened just now. I asked her to rest in the room for a while first. Which room? Qingyu led him to the room where Qin Shuhua was. Qin Shuhua seemed to be shocked, put away her phone, and said, why didn't you knock on the door when you came in? You scared me. Li Xiqing glanced at the phone in her hand and asked, who are you talking to? Your father. Qin Shuhua's eyes were a bit evasive as she replied, I was scared to death. You actually caught the young master of the Rong family. I have to tell your father. You don't have to say it. I have an idea. This guy killed your grandson and almost caused your daughter-in-law to be raped. Everything that Tang Menjing did before must have something to do with him. Qin Shuhua was a bit surprised, covered her mouth, and exclaimed, no way, is it really him? Yes. Li Xiqing responded quietly and walked up. Are you okay? I'll send you back first. Don't come here in the future. Qin Shuhua shook her head, evading his eyes, and said, I heard that you arranged a lot of people here, so I came to have a look. I didn't expect that guy to lie to me, it doesn't matter whether he lied to you or you let him out yourself. Li Xiqing's voice was a bit cold. Mom, I know you like Tang Menjing, but I believe you have seen the video at the party clearly. This kind of woman, let alone myself, will not be able to pass Grandpa's test. After so many years, you should know what Grandpa is like. I hope you don't get on his bad side. Li Xiqing's voice was cold. Of course, Qin Shuhua knew, but she had her own difficulties. How could she be willing to let Tang Menjing coerce her and harm her daughter-in-law like this? But Qin Shuhua let out a deep sigh and said, I understand. I will go back by myself. You stay here and deal with this guy. Let me walk you out. It's too late. Li Xiqing followed Qin Shuhua and glanced at her phone. When they walked out of the living room, Rong Rui had already climbed up. His hands were tied, but his legs were free. He stood not far from the sofa, surrounded by a dozen bodyguards. Rong Rui stood in the middle of the crowd, looking at them with a faint smile. Qin Shuhua walked through the center of the living room and went straight to the door. Li Xiqing followed closely. Suddenly, Rong Rui moved and rushed toward Qin Shuhua. Under the fluorescent light in the living room, she clearly saw a silver reflection on the side of his mouth. His pupils shrank as he shouted anxiously, "Be careful." Seeing that he was getting closer and closer, Qin Shuhua was so scared that she forgot to move. Suddenly, she felt a weight on her body. Qin Shuhua clearly felt that she was wrapped by a strong body, and then she heard the scream of Qingyu. Chapter 316. Seeing the bright red liquid splashing out, Qin Shuhua's face suddenly turned pale. No one expected that Rong Rui would have a weapon at this time. When Qin Shuhua passed by Rong Rui, she did not deliberately avoid him, but she never thought that she would hurt her son. Tears suddenly came out, and Qin Shuhua quickly held her son and shouted, "Sicheng." Qingyu looked at the dozen bodyguards around her and pinned Rong Rui down. One of the bodyguards took the little thing out of his mouth. Squatting down to take a closer look, Qingyu found that it was a switchblade. It was very small, but the knife was very sharp. The blade was about 3 or 4 centimeters long, and the whole knife was covered with blood. Li Xiqing's dark suit was half soaked, and his face suddenly became pale. Noticing Qin Shuhua's excitement, Li Xiqing looked much calmer and said slowly, "Mom, I'm fine." Qin Shuhua was even more anxious, sobbing and looking at his wound. "You're fine. There's so much blood. Call an ambulance. Call a doctor." Li Xiqing's face became paler and paler, and blood had directly dripped down his sleeve. He gasped in pain, but still said, "It's okay. Don't cry. Qingyu, take my mother back first." "Okay." Qingyu responded. "Hunter, take me to the hospital." Li Xiqing could not hold it anymore, and his hand covering the wound was already wet. Qin Shuhua covered her mouth and sobbed. Looking at Rong Rui, who had been pinned down by the bodyguards, she strode over and slapped him hard in the face. "Bastard, you ungrateful son of a b*tch." She almost listened to Tang Menjing and let him go. However, she did not expect that this guy would be so cruel. If this knife had been cut somewhere else, he might have lost his life. The more she thought about it, the more scared Qin Shuhua was. She lifted her foot and kicked him in the lower abdomen, cursing, "Bastard." Rong Rui screamed, but then he laughed very happily. Qingyu stared at him and whispered, "Pervert." Li Xiqing gave her a deep look, his face still as calm as before. Sloppy, vicious, a hacker, and highly skilled. This was Li Xiqing's impression of him. No matter how ruthless the Li family was, they were still good people and the pillars of the country. Ever since he was a child, Li Xiqing had been taught that if Li Sun did not offend him, he would not offend him. When he first caught Rong Rui, he was in a hurry to find Su Qianxi and had no time to deal with this guy. However, he never expected that Rong Rui would be so sick. Not only did he carry a knife with him, but he even hid a switchblade in his mouth. It was hard for him to imagine that a descendant of a minister or general would do something like this. However, Li Xiqing had no time to think. The wound was bleeding more and more, and his vision was a little dark. Looking at Qingyu, he said, "Don't tell my wife about what happened today. Mom, you too. Don't tell your family." His voice was getting weaker and weaker. Seeing that, the hunter picked him up and ran to the door. By the time he finished treating the wound, it was already midnight. Li Xiqing fainted because of blood loss, but fortunately, his nerves were not damaged. After stitches and a blood transfusion, he was sent to the ICU. In the dream, Li Xiqing and Rong Rui were fighting. Su Qianxi was so scared that she screamed, but she could not stop them. However, a sudden explosion blew the two of them into ashes, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. Chapter 317. What a terrible nightmare. There was no sign at all. It was the first time that she had had such a dream, and she felt more and more uneasy. She picked up the phone and dialed Li Xiqing's number, but the call could not be connected. Her heart felt more and more empty. Why couldn't he get through at this time? She checked the time. It was past 2 a.m. Li Xiqing had always been a light sleeper. If he heard the phone ringing, he would definitely pick it up. Could it be that the phone was turned off, or there was no signal? Su Qianxi was lost in her thoughts. When she dialed the 5th number, the call was connected. "Honey." Hearing Li Xiqing's voice, Su Qianxi was finally relieved. Her eyes suddenly became red and she asked, "What took you so long?" "I'm in a meeting in the United States. I may have to go on a business trip tomorrow." Su Qianxi was a bit suspicious. In her memory, there did not seem to be any important projects recently. Why was Li Xiqing so busy? What projects do you have to have a meeting so late? It's past 2 a.m. You didn't sleep well today. Go to bed early. Yes, why are you still up? I can't sleep. I had a nightmare. Su Qianxi felt wronged. She bent her legs and rested her chin on her knees. I dreamed that you had a conflict with Rong Rui, and then something happened. On the other side of the phone, Li Xiqing slightly paused and looked at the hunter next to him. The hunter was bewildered by the stare and blinked his eyes in bewilderment. Silly, dreams are all opposite, which means I am very good. Hearing that, Su Qianxi was relieved and said, okay, then go to bed early. I will not disturb you. When is your flight? 6 o'clock. Remember to have a good rest on the plane. Okay, good night. Good night. Hanging up the phone, Li Xiqing's sharp eyes fell on the hunter. You told her? Who? That was the hunter's first reaction, but he quickly recovered. No, she called several times, but I did not dare to answer. In the end, he woke up and answered the phone himself. Tell Qingyu not to tell her. I don't want her to worry. As he spoke, he lifted the quilt and was about to get out of bed. The hunter was startled and exclaimed, Boss, the doctor said you'd better not move. The wound is very deep. I need to go to the bathroom. Oh, let me help you. I'm already married. The hunter was speechless. A married woman can't even be helped to the bathroom by a man? Even keeping one's chastity as jade isn't this kind of law-abiding. However, the hunter was smart enough to call Qingyu after he left the ward. Qingyu sat in the living room and watched him being tied up. This time, he couldn't even move his fingers, let alone his feet. Got it. She did not call to ask me. Even if she did, would not tell her. Qingyu yawned, feeling sleepy. That's it. Goodbye. Leaning on the sofa, she fell asleep. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, the door was opened, and she woke up with a fright. It was the big boss. Aren't you hospitalized? He did not look at her but at Rong Rui, who was sleeping on the ground. Close the door and beat the dog. Li Xiqing's steps were very steady, and his face was very gloomy. However, because of his slightly pale face, he looked more indifferent and sharp. The hunter hurriedly closed the door, and then he heard an order from Li Xiqing. Keep him alive. As for the rest, you can do whatever you want. The bodyguards did not know how to speak, but when they heard Li Xiqing's order, their eyes all lit up. Chapter 318. In fact, Rong Rui had already woken up when he heard Li Xiqing's first sentence. At this moment, hearing such a direct and perverted order, he suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, Li Xiqing. My surname is Rong. Rong Haiyue is my uncle, and my grandfather is Rong Jingsheng. If you do anything to me, my uncle and grandfather will not let you go. Li Xiqing heard that, curled his lips and said slowly, Really? I am just playing with a thief who broke into my family's territory. What does it have to do with them? Hearing that, Rong Rui panicked. Indeed, Kingstown was the territory of the Li family. After all, Rong Rui was just an outsider. Although the Rong family had a high status in the capital, they were evenly matched with the Li family. And he was the one who offended them first. Was he going to be defeated today? Rong Rui's face turned pale and he shouted uneasily, Li. Do it. These two cold words directly excited these bodyguards who had suppressed their emotions for many years. One by one, they moved their muscles and surrounded Rong Rui with a smile on their faces. Qingyu was creeped out and shivered on the side. Go back first and go to work tomorrow afternoon. Have a good rest. Li Xiqing's words were so considerate. Qingyu was so moved that she almost cried. She nodded and quickly went out the door. Hunter watched with great interest. He crossed his arms and said, Boss, do you think these bodyguards like men? Rong Rui's current situation was completely like a little white rabbit in a wolf's den. His face was full of fear, looking like a little submissive. TSK, so poor. Li Xiqing looked at him coldly and responded, that's true. The hunter was so shocked that he almost fell. That's true? What? These bodyguards had always liked men? Holy shit, this is way too explosive. The hunter looked at Rong Roy's eyes with even more sympathy. At the same time, there was a strong fear. Fortunately, he didn't completely fail the last time. Otherwise, would the big boss also reward him to this group of hungry and thirsty bodyguards? Ah! Rong Roy screamed as he took a solid punch to the face. Then, the ropes on his body were untied. Rong Roy struggled with his hands and feet, trying to escape. However, Rong Roy was not tall. He was only 178 centimeters, which was of medium height. In front of the tall and burly bodyguards, there was no way they could fight back. A bodyguard pushed him to the ground and bent his knees to press his waist. Under Rong Roy's frightened and angry eyes, he slapped him directly in the face. Pa! 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 Then, another bodyguard lifted him up, and with a tug, the sound of clothes being torn was heard. Rong Roy was scared and shouted, Li Xiqing, we. Ah! Let's talk. Unmoved, Li Xiqing looked at him coldly. Rong Roy's pants were taken off. Sobbing, he shouted desperately, Li Xiqing. I am the young master of the Rong family. You can't do this to me. Ah! The screams almost broke through the sky. The hunter could not bear to look at it. Crossing his legs, he said, Boss, are you going too far? This guy is also, do you want to try? The hunter immediately shut up and took a step back. Chapter 319. The hunter covered his face and could not bear to watch anymore. 12 strong men and 12 bodyguards. If they all attacked him at once, well, it would be inconvenient. If they took turns, it would be. The hunter sympathized with Rong Roy, but Li Xiqing looked indifferent, as if he did not feel much about what was about to happen. People can't be compared with each other, and men can't be compared with each other either. The gap between him and the big boss was so huge that the hunter felt ashamed of his inferiority. Being lifted up, Rong Roy screamed, Li Xiqing, you will regret it. Don't touch me there, pervert. Let go. As soon as Rong Roy shouted, the bodyguard really let go of him. With a bang, Rong Roy fell face first on the ground. His nose hit the ground, and a strong smell of blood came out. Then, a bodyguard sat on him, and Rong Roy clearly felt that the man's body was reacting to him. Rong Roy twisted crazily and yelled, No, Li Xiqing. You are so heartless. You will get what you deserve. Are you cursing me? Li Xiqing slightly raised an eyebrow and suddenly chuckled. He glanced at Su Qianxi casually and sat on the sofa behind him. The warm yellow light in the living room shone on him, making him look like a god. His facial features were exquisite and his temperament was impeccable. Crossing his legs, he looked at Rong Roy and said slowly, Do you want me to let you go? Yes, of course. No one wanted to be humiliated by a man, especially 12 at once. If they really did, Rong Roy would not be able to keep his life. Beg me. Li Xiqing's thin lips parted, and he uttered 2 words. Staring at him, Rong Roy gritted his teeth and did not speak. It depends on whether Mr. Rong is sincere. There was a struggle on Rong Roy's face. Suddenly, the bodyguard sitting on him moved, which scared Rong Roy and he yelled, I beg you. Li Xiqing raised an eyebrow and looked at him calmly. I beg you, Li Xiqing, let me go. Rong Roy blushed. He looked at Li Xiqing and said, Please let me go. I will never mess with you again. I swear in the name of the Rong family. If I break my promise, I will be struck by lightning. There was a trace of satisfaction in Li Xiqing's calm and indifferent eyes, but he still curled his lips and said, It seems that Mr. Rong does not know what beg means. Rong Roy's expression changed and he gritted his teeth. Don't go too far. Li Xiqing waved his hand, and the bodyguard behind him moved again. Wait. Rong Roy threw caution to the wind. His lower body was bare. It was definitely not a good thing to be faced by a man like this. Make him go away first. Li Xiqing waved his hand. The bodyguard got up automatically. Rong Roy got up and knelt in front of Li Xiqing. He gritted his teeth and said, although a man has gold under his knees, he only has one life. Li Xiqing, please let me go. That's not what I want. Rong Roy became angry and rushed up. However, before he reached Li Xiqing, he was stopped by several bodyguards. Rong Roy cursed, Fu *K, Li Xiqing, are you messing with me? Li Xiqing slowly took out his cell phone, waved it in front of him, and then dialed Tang Menjing's number. Chapter 320. Rong Roy struggled hard, but the bodyguards behind him were too strong for him to break free. Gritting his teeth, he cursed, Li Xiqing, you're despicable. Tang Menjing's call was quickly connected. Li Xiqing put the call on speaker and waved his hand. The bodyguards covered Rong Roy's mouth to prevent him from making a sound. Hello. Tang Menjing sounded a bit surprised. Looking at the time, it was already 3 a.m. Why was Li Xiqing calling her at this hour? Brother Xiqing, is that you? It's me. Leaning back on the sofa, Li Xiqing looked at Rong Roy, who was struggling harder and harder, and said slowly, did my mother tell you? Tang Menjing's heart skipped a beat. Did he know something? Feeling a bit scared, Tang Menjing asked cautiously, what did Auntie say to you? I was injured. I was stabbed when I was beating Rong Roy. Tang Menjing was startled. She really did not know about this. Her first reaction was to ask, are you okay? Where are you hurt? Is it serious? The series of questions were full of concern. However, her focus was only on Li Xiqing was stabbed, not Rong Roy was beaten. Rong Roy clearly noticed the difference in treatment and felt uncomfortable. He wanted to warn her not to fall into the trap, but the bodyguards behind him firmly held him down and did not let him move at all. Li Xiqing changed his posture, appreciating Rong Roy's state and replied, it's quite serious. My artery was hurt. This was the truth, but it was not Li Xiqing's style to tell the truth. The hunter knew it well and felt sorry for Tang Menjing and Rong Roy. Although he did not know what Li Xiqing wanted to do, it was definitely not a good thing. Tang Menjing did not doubt him at all and asked anxiously, then what should we do? Where are you now? 2097 Villa in Jiangzhou. Okay, I'll call an ambulance for you right away. No need. The wound has been treated. You just need to come, Li Xiqing said. Tang Menjing was dazed. Me? Yes, I want to see you. Tang Menjing's heart suddenly raced as she said incredulously, Brother Xiqing, if it's not convenient, of course. Tang Menjing said hurriedly, but immediately realized that she was being too impatient. Shyly, she whispered, I'll be right there. Brother Xiqing, wait for me. Li Xiqing hung up and looked at Rong Roy, who had been quiet. She is coming. What do you think she will choose? The bodyguard loosened Rong Roy's mouth, and the latter immediately screamed, what the hell do you want? What did he mean by tricking Tang Menjing into coming here? Showing off Tang Menjing's love for him? Or was Li Xiqing deliberately showing off his charm, telling him that the woman he liked actually loved him? Thinking of Tang Menjing's joyful words, he felt terrible. She had never been like that to him. Li Xiqing curled his lips and said slowly, you will know in a moment. Looking at Li Xiqing's expression, Rong Roy suddenly thought of one word, danger. This man was deeper than Rong Roy had imagined. He had a bad feeling, but no matter how he guessed, he could not figure out what Li Xiqing wanted to do. Chapter 321. When Tang Menjing arrived, it was already 4 in the morning. As soon as she entered, she heard Rong Rui screaming. Tang Menjing was shocked and walked in. Rong Rui was surrounded by a dozen bodyguards, half kneeling on the ground. He was not wearing anything. Quickly looking away, Tang Menjing looked at Li Xicheng. Seeing the blood on Li Xicheng's hand, she asked nervously, "Brother Xicheng, are you okay?" Li Xicheng did not answer but said, "Get a glass of water for Miss Tang." The hunter took the order and put a bottle of water in front of Tang Menjing. "This is the only one. Just drink it." Tang Menjing was a bit dissatisfied with the hunter's perfunctory attitude and looked at Li Xicheng, hoping that he would stand up for her. However, Li Xicheng did not seem to see it and said, "He confessed." Hearing that, both Tang Menjing and Rong Rui were dazed. Confessed? What did he confess? Tang Menjing was a bit nervous and looked away. What? What do you mean? Mr. Rong said that the child in your belly is not mine. He changed the DNA himself and hacked the internal records of the genetics department, so the DNA comparison showed that it is related to my father's. Tang Menjing's expression changed and looked at Rong Rui. Rong Rui's expression also changed. He had never thought that Li Xicheng would ask Tang Menjing to come for this purpose. This was what it meant to fabricate right and wrong, turn black and white upside down, and lie. You. Before Rong Rui finished, his mouth was covered by the bodyguard. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not get rid of it. In fact, the child in your belly belongs to a foreigner, which is clearly shown in the video he hacked. Your next plan is to find a chance to meet my wife and frame her. Nonsense. Tang Menjing's face turned pale and she suddenly stood up. How could I do such a thing? Brother Xicheng, I love you sincerely. This child is really your child. Besides, Qianxi and I are good friends. Even if we are not on good terms now, I would not do such a thing. Tang Menjing looked aggrieved. Brother Xicheng, we grew up together. Don't you know me? How could I be such a person? She had no idea how much of their conversation that afternoon had been overheard by him. However, judging from Li Xicheng's current attitude, he should not have heard much. Tang Menjing made up her mind and denied, "Even if you don't believe me, you should believe me. Auntie was the one who accompanied me to do the paternity test. No matter what, you should believe in your mother, right? He hacked all the surveillance and data. There's no proof no matter what you say." Gritting her teeth, Tang Menjing looked at him and said, "Why did you do this to me? I know how you feel about me, but you can't do this to me. Don't you know how much this kind of thing hurts a woman?" Rong Rui struggled less and less as he stared at her. "Rong Rui, I have had enough of you. So, what he did has nothing to do with you?" Li Xicheng asked in a soft voice. "No. But he said he's with you." "Nonsense." Tang Menjing denied and hurriedly said, "Brother Xicheng, I am not that kind of person." "Fine." Li Xicheng looked at her coldly and whispered, "I said, if what he said is true, let him go. If he lied to me, I will reward him to my men and let them enjoy him to their heart's content." In the end, he added, "They all like men, and they are very interested in Rong Rui." Tang Menjing's pupils contracted as she looked at the burly bodyguards behind Rong Rui, shocked. With a complicated look, Rong Rui looked at Tang Menjing and begged for help. "Menjing, I don't want to die. Help me, I will ask you one last time. Is what he said true or false?" In other words, Tang Menjing could decide Rong Rui's fate. If it was true, he would live. Chapter 322. If it was true, he would live. If it was false, he would rather die. Tang Menjing pinched her arm, looking at Rong Rui who was begging for help. She suddenly panicked. As if to cooperate with Li Xicheng, one of the bodyguards had moved behind Rong Rui and put his hand on Rong Rui's lower body. Rong Rui shivered and begged Tang Menjing, "Menjing, I have done so much for you. I don't ask you to repay me, but you can't just watch me die." If he really fell into the hands of these people, Rong Rui was afraid, everyone knew what the result would be. Tang Menjing was not a fool. On the contrary, she was very smart. However, because of her cleverness, Tang Menjing knew very well what would happen to her if she confessed at this time. Clearly seeing the struggle on her face, Rong Rui was delighted. He knew it. He knew it. She would not just watch him die, would she? She would not leave him to die, would she? Rong Rui. Tang Menjing's voice was dry and hoarse, looking indifferent. Rong Rui's excitement seemed to have been poured with a bucket of cold water, freezing his heart. No way, no way. However, what Tang Menjing said next made him collapse. She said, "How can I confess to something I did not do?" His strength seemed to be drained, and he could not get up again. The hunter looked at Rong Rui sympathetically and asked, "Boss, what should we do?" Li Xiqing gave Tang Menjing a deep look and said slowly, "He is yours." The bodyguards were excited, looking at Rong Rui with unspeakable passion and excitement. They rubbed their hands and surrounded Rong Rui. And Rong Rui was no longer struggling like before. His eyes were blank, staring at Tang Menjing, his heart was dead. There is nothing sadder than a dead heart, and the death of a person, letting his body be manipulated. Rong Rui no longer showed any signs of struggling. Tang Menjing did not dare to look at his eyes. She turned her head and looked away. She knew that he was good to her. But she could not. If she admitted it now, it would be a slap in the face. At that time, she would be finished. The Tang family would be finished. Everything would be finished. She couldn't ruin the entire Tang family for her own selfishness. For now, he could only borrow Su Qianxi's hand. Tang Menjing's eyes reddened as she heard the rustling sound not far away. Her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. However, he did not utter a single word. "Let's go inside." His voice was deep and meaningful. "Don't do it in the living room. There are women there." The bodyguards took the order and dragged Rong Rui into the room. Tang Menjing squeezed her hands and looked at the room. Seeing Rong Rui's desperate eyes, he almost went crazy. His eyes were scarlet, and he roared, "Tang Menjing, ah! Ah!" The door to the room wasn't closed tightly, it was just left ajar. After a while, a suppressed roar came from inside the room. There was also the sound of their bodies colliding. Every sound was stimulating her nerves. Rong Rui, bang! The door was closed, blocking all the sound inside. Tang Menjing fell onto the sofa, her face pale. Chapter 323. She was the one who pushed him into the abyss. "This is the house I prepared for you. Do you like it?" Li Xiqing suddenly said with a meaningful tone. Tang Menjing was a bit absent-minded. Hearing his words, she looked at Li Xiqing. However, she was caught off guard and met his deep eyes. He said, "Take this house as a meeting gift from me to my child. From today onwards, you can live here." Child, a gift to the child? So, he had accepted it? Tang Menjing looked at him in a daze. "You can have all the bodyguards in the house. They will be responsible for your safety." Putting one hand in his pocket, Li Xiqing gazed at her. Under the light in the living room, Li Xiqing seemed to have a lazy glow, making him look like he had walked out of a painting she had secretly drawn. So dazzling and charming, Tang Menjing's heart skipped a beat, looking at Li Xiqing. He was looking at her. He was really looking at her. She had waited for a long, long time. Tang Menjing's eyes suddenly became red. Looking at him, she called, "Brother Xiqing." After so many years, Tang Menjing had thought that what she wanted was just a dream. She thought that he was just a dream for her. But this house was a gift for her child. He believed it. He really thought that this was their child. The hunter felt his heart ache as he listened to the story. Was Li Xiqing serious? Although this house was not in the center of the city, it was still very large and would cost at least tens of millions. Was he really going to give it away like this? The hunter was a bit shocked. Seeing Tang Menjing's reaction, he immediately thought of a honey trap. However, what did Li Xiqing want? Get some rest. It's almost dawn, Li Xiqing said thoughtfully. Li Xiqing said thoughtfully, later, a nanny will come over and take care of you from now on. It was the first time that Tang Menjing had seen Li Xiqing so gentle. Bodyguards and housekeepers were all arranged for her, and by Li Xiqing himself? This was something that Tang Menjing could not even imagine in the past. All of a sudden, she felt warm and asked, Brother Xiqing, why are you so nice to me all of a sudden? Hearing that, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened as he glanced at her slightly bulging belly. Tang Menjing finally understood that he probably really regarded the child as his own flesh and blood. Secretly delighted, Tang Menjing became more and more excited. In this way, when Su Qianxi framed her to have an abortion, his reaction must be very interesting. At that time, it would be killing two birds with one stone. On the one hand, she could clear her name and the Tang family's name. On the other hand, Su Qianxi could no longer stand by his side. With the help of Qin Shuhua, she could replace Su Qianxi and become the new mistress of the Li family. Tang Menjing was very excited. She seemed to be getting closer and closer to her goal. Bang! A muffled sound suddenly came from Rong Rui's room. Tang Menjing was startled and came back to her senses. The door to the room was opened, and a bodyguard walked out. There was a trace of panic on his face. He did not know how to speak, so he could only gesture with his hands. Chapter 324. Suicide. Hearing these two words, Tang Menjing's heart suddenly trembled. Seeing the bodyguard nodding, Li Xiqing looked at Tang Menjing. She covered her mouth and turned pale with fright. There was shock and fear, but there was no reluctance or sadness. Li Xiqing seemed to have seen through her feelings for Rong Rui and couldn't help feeling sorry for him. Waving his hand, Li Xiqing said quietly, "Take him to the hospital." It had been 3 days. Rong Rui had been trapped here for 3 days. His hands were handcuffed to the bed. Only when he was physically required would he be taken to the bathroom by 2 strong bodyguards. For the rest of the time, he was trapped in bed, without freedom or direction. Rong Rui looked at the ceiling, his eyes empty. Instead of being sent to the hospital, he was sent to another villa under Li Xiqing's name. Just at the door, there were 2 bodyguards and 2 nannies guarding his bed. He had to say that Li Xiqing was really considerate and cunning. Rong Rui never knew that a person could be so despicable. He set him up, set Tang Menjing up, and treated him like a fool from the beginning to the end. After being dragged into the room by the bodyguards, Rong Rui almost thought that he would be killed by them. However, they took him to a screen and let him see Tang Menjing's expression clearly. Tang Menjing's fear, joy, calculation, surprise, and the look on her face after hearing that he had committed suicide. All these scenes made him disheartened. He thought that she would see him. He thought that no matter how heartless she was, she would not leave him alone. However, reality was like a fiery slap, ruthlessly slapping his face. Ha! Ha ha ha! Rong Rui smiled and looked at the ceiling, but there were tears in his eyes, like a wounded clown, sad and ridiculous. "Hey, what are you doing?" A teasing voice came in, and Rong Rui looked at the door. It was Li Xiqing's assistant, the woman who had fought with him twice. She looked at him, her eyes smiling into a beautiful crescent. "Why don't we talk?" Rong Rui was sent to the hospital, and Li Xiqing followed him. Tang Menjing fell asleep in the room Li Xiqing arranged for her. When she woke up, it was already noon. She stretched her back comfortably, and before she could say anything, a maid came up to greet her respectfully. Her attitude was humble, and she bent her knees respectfully. This was simply the same treatment as imperial concubines in ancient times. Tang Menjing was very satisfied. She squinted and enjoyed the maid's service. During the whole process, Tang Menjing did not say a word to the maid. After washing up, Tang Menjing went out for breakfast and walked elegantly to the garden. She found that the backyard and the front yard were surrounded by 2-meter-high walls with beautiful murals. The two maids quietly followed Tang Menjing and walked around the entire villa. In the afternoon, Tang Menjing went back to her room with satisfaction. Pushing open the window, he wanted to take a look at the scenery outside. To his surprise, he saw the backyard garden outside the window. Looking further ahead, he saw a thick wall. The exquisite murals painted in the style of ancient Roman mythology depicted a touching legend. It was already autumn, but the flowers and grass were still flowers and grass. The wind was blowing, the grass was swaying, and the flowers were shaking. Chapter 325. Leaving the window open, Tang Menjing went to the bed and sat down. She took out her phone and sent the photo she had just taken to Su Qianxi. The first class in the afternoon had just begun. Not long after the professor arrived, Su Qianxi's phone rang. Feeling embarrassed, Su Qianxi quickly turned her phone on silent mode. With a series of vibrations, pictures appeared on the notification bar. The sender was Tang Menjing. Su Qianxi did not even want to open it. When she was about to put the phone in her bag and focus on the class, a few words suddenly popped up on the notification bar. "Look, Brother Sicheng gave it to me." Su Qianxi narrowed her eyes and clicked on WeChat. The message was, "Look, the villa Brother Sicheng gave me. It's so big and comfortable." She looked at the more than 20 pictures one by one. This was the villa in Jiangzhou, where Grandpa died in her previous lifetime. It was indeed under Li Sicheng's name. After she divorced him, he gave her the villa as part of the alimony payment. However, why would Li Sicheng give it to her? Just when Su Qianxi was lost in thought, her phone vibrated again. "Tang Menjing, I have to talk to you now. Brother Sicheng is here to see me." Seeing this sentence, Su Qianxi frowned. Li Sicheng went to see her? At this time? Wasn't he on a business trip? Su Qianxi, smile. About a minute or two later, Tang Menjing replied, but there was no text, just a selfie. In the photo, Tang Menjing looked a bit weak because of her pregnancy, but she had a bright smile on her face. Just behind Tang Menjing, a familiar tall figure was in the photo. His face was cold and indifferent, looking down at the documents in front of him, just like how Li Sicheng usually dealt with business. The angle of the photo was his side profile, which meant that Tang Menjing hid behind him and took the photo. Looking at the display and the background, everything was still Li Sicheng's style, just like when she first moved in her previous lifetime. Su Qianxi withdrew her hand and looked at the man in the photo incredulously. This was Li Sicheng. Wasn't he on a business trip? At this time, shouldn't he still be on the plane? Why was he in Jiangzhou? Why was he in the villa? And with Tang Menjing? After class, she couldn't wait to call Li Sicheng. The phone was turned off. She called Qingyu, and Qingyu quickly answered, "Hi, madam." Su Qianxi was silent for a moment and said, "Assistant Qing, let me ask you something. Answer me honestly." This kind of opening usually didn't mean anything good. She perked up. "Okay. Where is Mr. Li now?" Qingyu had an ominous feeling in her heart. Why did she feel that Lady Boss had already seen through everything? However, after thinking about it, she still said the lines she had prepared. "Boss went to the United States for a meeting. I think it will be a while before he comes back. He should be on the plane right now." "Really?" Qingyu was even more nervous, but as a qualified and ethical assistant, her tone was calm and natural. "Really? Oh, thank you." Chapter 326. Hanging up the phone, she could no longer sit still. There was only one thought in her mind: he lied to her, he lied to her. Quickly walking out of the school, she felt a bit uneasy and took a taxi to Jiangzhou's house. "Mom, I know. Now Brother Sicheng is here with me. I will take care." Tang Menjing's voice was full of sweetness. Her big eyes seemed to be fixed on Li Sicheng, not moving away at all. Sitting on the sofa, Li Sicheng had a contract in front of him. Hearing her charming voice, there was a trace of imperceptible disgust in his eyes. Tang Menjing did not notice it at all. It seemed that Mrs. Tang had said something embarrassing on the other side of the phone. With a shy face, Tang Menjing said, "Oh, Mom, what are you talking about? I don't want to talk to you anymore. That's it. I'm hanging up." Her cheeks were red, and her face was full of love. At this moment, Tang Menjing was indescribably seductive, mature, and overflowing with the brilliance of motherhood. However, Li Xiqing was not moved and said, "I have talked to your parents. From today on, you will live here. They will be responsible for your safety." Li Xiqing pointed at a row of bodyguards standing not far away. There were not many, just 20. Then he looked at another row of women, ranging in age from teenagers to 30s, all young and respectful. "They will take care of your daily life." The number of maids and nannies was the same, 20. Tang Menjing was both touched and surprised. Blushing, she said, "Brother Xiqing. Are you serious? Our child is not even born yet, and you have already spent so much on him. When he is born, you will spoil him." Li Xiqing's eyes lit up. "Our child." Li Xiqing felt disgusted for no reason. Resisting the urge to leave immediately, he gazed at her with a pair of dark eyes. The complexity at the bottom of his eyes made it difficult to see what exactly he was feeling. Tang Menjing felt even more excited. Looking away, she asked nervously, "What? What's wrong? Was it because she was particularly beautiful today?" It was said that people were in high spirits when they were happy, and it was true. Tang Menjing touched her face and couldn't help curling her lips. "It won't be for nothing." Li Xiqing's voice was cold and deep. "We can get it back soon." Hearing that, Tang Menjing nodded and whispered, "If the child is like you, he will be very successful. These things are nothing. He will earn them back sooner or later." Li Xiqing glanced at her and did not explain. He stood up and said, "I should go to the hospital to change my dressing. You rest well and take care of yourself." Tang Menjing reluctantly reached out and grabbed his sleeve. "Will you come tonight?" Li Xiqing glanced at the hand, and Tang Menjing felt her hand was scalded and quickly let it go. "When I'm done," he said coldly and turned to leave. Tang Menjing was a bit disappointed, but thinking of everything he had left for her, she couldn't help feeling sweet. Just wait and see. The position of Mrs. Li would be hers sooner or later. The taxi stopped near the villa. When she was about to get out, the black European-style door of the villa opened. A black Maybach slowly drove out, and Su Qianxi clearly saw the man sitting in the passenger seat. His temperament was cold and his expression indifferent. She was so familiar with him. Chapter 327. Su Qianxi's heart felt like it had been pierced by a hedgehog. It was so painful that it felt like it was about to be torn apart. Her eyes were hot, and tears rolled down her cheeks. He lied to her, he lied to her. He was really here, with Tang Menjing. But why, wasn't he on a business trip? Didn't he go to America? Even Xingyu was lying to her. Taking out her phone, she clicked on the number on the top of the contact list and dialed it. This time, the phone was not turned off. Su Qianxi glanced at the time. It was past 5 p.m. With a hint of sarcasm in her eyes, she suddenly chuckled. So dedicated. At this time, the plane had already arrived in New York. Turning on the phone at this time was indeed perfect. The call was quickly connected. Before he spoke, Su Qianxi said, "Honey." He did not expect that she would be so passionate today. Hearing this word, all the gloominess was gone. Frowning, he said quietly, "Honey." These two words were said casually, but they were filled with his deep feelings and tenderness. However, in Su Qianxi's ears, it was like the ultimate punishment, trampling all her dignity on the ground. "You're on a business trip today?" "Yeah." He paused, seeming to be thinking. After about a second, he said, "Just got off the plane." "Liar." Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat, and she burst into tears. She immediately covered her mouth, fearing that she would cry out loud. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, his voice extremely gentle, with the most considerate intimacy. "Is class over?" Seeing her like this, the taxi driver considerately took a tissue for her and handed it to her. She wiped her tears with the tissue, took a deep breath, and tried to make her voice sound calm. She asked, "Yeah. You know, I just saw someone who looked like you. I thought it was you, but it turned out that I was wrong." Li Xiqing's voice sounded nice. He teased, "Did you miss me?" She frowned and blushed. After a few seconds of silence, she slowly replied, "No, not at all. Don't be sarcastic. I won't laugh at you." He leaned back in his chair and said in a low voice, "I miss you, too." Liar. Su Qianxi blinked, and hot tears rolled down her cheeks again. Her voice was choked with sobs. "Mr. Li, I'm so tired. So tired, so tired." She felt that she could not love him anymore. He didn't want her. He didn't like her. She knew it. She knew it all. But why did he lie to her? Since he loved Tang Menjing, why did he have to torture her in such a cruel way? What's wrong? Li Xiqing frowned and asked with concern, "Are you under a lot of pressure?" "I miss you." He finally relaxed his frown and whispered, "I'll be back soon." "Good girl." Su Qianxi covered her mouth with one hand and hung up the phone. Finally, she could not help but burst into tears. When the phone was hung up, Li Xiqing's heart felt warm as if it was burning. This woman, Li Xiqing couldn't help curling his lips. However, the hunter exclaimed, "Boss, your hand is bleeding again." Li Xiqing glanced at it and did not notice when it was bleeding. At the same time, he felt relieved. Fortunately, he was on a business trip. Otherwise, she would be worried if she saw it. "Go to the hospital." The hunter took the order and drove in the direction of the first military hospital. Chapter 328. 2 days was not a long time. However, for Tang Menjing, it was extremely difficult. "Maid, I want to eat sour plums." "Laurel, I want noodles." "What's wrong with you? You can't even do such a small thing. Brother Xiqing must have fed you for nothing." "Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Do you know who I am?" Tang Menjing ordered the maids and nannies around, satisfying her desire to be the hostess. However, at the same time, she felt empty and disappointed. After ordering the maids around, Tang Menjing went to sleep. When she woke up, she was so bored that she wanted to spit bubbles. Suddenly, Tang Menjing remembered the most important thing she had not done yet. She was going to Li Xiqing's company. And she was going to ask Su Qianxi to lend her a hand. Although he had told her not to go out easily and to stay at home, wouldn't it be more meaningful if she could send the child away without his expectation? Without hesitation, Tang Menjing picked out a loose dress from the closet that showed off her belly and put on delicate makeup. The woman in the mirror was exquisite and mature. Her beauty was beyond comparison. Tang Menjing put on her bag with satisfaction and walked out. Seeing Tang Menjing so energetic, the two maids who were guarding the door looked at each other and immediately followed her. "You don't have to follow me. I will go out for a walk." Tang Menjing became impatient when she saw them. They were all mute, and only Laurel could speak. How boring. Laurel, the maid's supervisor, quickly came over and shouted, "Miss Tang, what are you doing? Do I need to tell you?" Tang Menjing said grumpily. "Mr. Li said that you should take a good rest. If you are not well during pregnancy, it will be hard for you to give birth." The last sentence was added by Laurel herself. However, Tang Menjing was overjoyed. "Okay, I see. But I have to go out for a while. I will be back soon." "No, Miss Tang, you can't go out." Perhaps they heard Moon Laurel's movements. The two bodyguards standing at the door became even colder. They stood at the door and blocked it. "What do you mean?" I can't go out. Miss Tang, you can stay at home. This is what Sir wants. Tang Menjing was furious. How dare you? Why can't I go out? It seems that I can't control you. Then she dialed Li Xiqing's number. However, although the cell phone's signal bar was full, the call couldn't be made. Tang Menjing was shocked. She tried to open the data connection and switch to 3G/4G, but found that she could not even send WeChat messages. Tang Menjing's face changed. She immediately thought of the beautiful murals around the villa and the 2-meter-high wall. The bodyguards heard the commotion and surrounded them. The maids were respectful but not fearful at all. Laurel looked at her with a warning gaze. Tang Menjing's heart skipped a beat, and a crazy idea filled her mind. She was under house arrest. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Su Qianxi did not know how she got through the week. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling window on the 16th floor, she watched the cars and people coming and going. As time passed, she did not even know how long she had been standing. Her legs were numb, but she had no intention of sitting down. The phone rang, and she was pulled back to reality. Glancing at the screen, she saw it was Qin Shuhua. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.